Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are talking about Tianxia, and our copy was provided for review, but the thoughts in this video are all our own.
Tianxia is a 1 to 4 player game designed by Daniele Tascini and Antonio Petrelli, and it takes place around 260 BCE in China, when there were 7 warring kingdoms who had to sometimes band together to fight the invaders from the north. Let's take a look at how it plays.
You start the game with a player board, a starting building, some supplies, a few objectives, and a bunch of workers, walls, towers, and deliveries that you want to get out onto the board. Round start with income and increasing the strength of nomads, but we'll get back to that later. On your turn, you can either pay coins to add a worker to a barge, gaining a resource, and possibly pushing a worker off the barge and placing them on their player's board for future free actions, or place an action marker in a region, which will let you move up a palace track, then usually make some kind of trade. And then, depending on the region, either pay wood to place a worker as a governor, gaining access to both ongoing and income buildings, pay goods to take a shipping action, trading those goods for various delivery bonuses, or pay rocks or rice to build walls and train soldiers, which fortifies your defenses against end-of-round attacks. At the end of the round, if any of the nomads advance to the end of their battle paths, there is an attack, which means you compare the nomad strength to the shared defenses of all players in that region, which gains points for whoever contributed the most. And if the nomads aren't defeated, they continue into the countryside and remove all governors in their path until they are quelled. There's a lot more to this game than that, with bonus tiles and statue collecting and free actions, but after 4 rounds of taking actions and fighting nomads, players score up to 3 objectives from their hand, as well as their place on the palace tracks, jade figures on their boards, and a few points for leftover stuff. And then the greatest noble family is named.
So there is a lot going on, and you need a lot of stuff to be able to do everything else. And everything is so interconnected. It is a very, very tight game, and you really have to think and plan turns out, because you definitely don't want to waste a turn.
Yeah, you've only got 12, well, you've got kind of more actions than that, but you kind of only have 12 actions in this game. You have 12 disc placements in this game.
Yeah, and those disc placements are going to be your main actions, because that's when you're able to hopefully get a lot done. Because when you put a disc out, often you'll be able to trade like your resources for goods. You might be able to put a governor in place. You'll be able to go up a temple track. And so you are trying to do as many of those things as possible when you put a disc out. But you are right, because on top of that, you also instead on your turn, you can put a person on a barge to get some of those much needed resources.
Yeah, and those bonus tiles as well, because that's one of the ways that you're going to get resources. So there are a bunch of different ways that you get resources. You get them from putting people on barges. You get them from putting governors out first so that you get those tokens. You get them from moving up those temple tracks. And you also get them from shipping. But every single thing you do, you need resources in order to get resources. There is also an action where you can just give away an action in order to get 2 coins. But you really, really don't want to do that. We haven't had to do that yet. But that would definitely be what we refer to as the loser action in this game. That is the, I screwed up. I don't know what else to do, because that will set it up that now you've got coins, you can put people on barges, then you're going to get resources, then you can do stuff, but it's going to set you back a few turns.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. Another way too you can get resources are with your objective cards, because for those you can choose to spend them and you'll get certain things from that, or if you don't spend them, they score at the end of the game. And it can be really valuable to spend those, especially early, to try and just be able to get more stuff done. But it does mean you are potentially losing those points at the end.
Yeah, because you can get like 15 points out of those cards, but you can also get like 3 or 4 goods out of those cards, and sometimes really good goods. And yeah, so those are, either way, they're worth a lot, but you can only score 3 of those at the end of the game. But yeah, so this game is really, if you are very AP prone, you're really going to feel that in this game. If you're not, you're still really going to feel that in this game. Because I think we generally play games fairly quickly. But I want Jess to take a long turn here, just so I have time to think out my turn, because boy is there thinking.
And the other thing you've got to think about is the wall, because at the end of the round, the invaders might invade. And so you really want to try and defend. And you want to defend for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it can get you a lot of points. But secondly, if the invaders breach the wall, then they'll start going down and attacking the buildings, and you might lose your governors that you placed.
Yeah, and those are... It's one of the few kind of random elements. There are a couple random elements in this game, but they're only in between rounds. So you always have like full knowledge for your round, except people getting in your way, which happens a lot. But at the beginning of each round, you're going to flip a card. That's going to tell you how far these horses are going to move and how high up the invader's strength is going to be. And they get pretty tough pretty fast. Generally, they don't invade you in the first round. But from the second to the fourth round, we've had them invade. On average, there'll be 2 breaches each time. And so you really have to work together. And I like that. I like when a game has that kind of like tentative cooperation, but it's also competition, because 7 points for winning, plus you get points for any of your people that go off to defend, and you get points for any of the governors that are left in that region if you score the most for the region. So if you have the most in there, you've got potentially like 10, 12 points out of that. And that is a lot of points in this game.
Yeah, so you are motivated to defend in the region that will be immediately attacking. But if you are defending, you want to try and be defending the most, because you'll get the best benefit from that. And so it is interesting that there is a little bit of collaboration. And this is seen also in Great Wall, which is another game that involves the Great Wall too. But that's done like quite a bit differently, where it's more like punishing people who didn't contribute to defense.
Yeah, and I think that that's going to be the obvious comparison for this game is Great Wall and Tianxia. And maybe people might wonder, if I already have Great Wall, would I be interested in this? They are super different games, other than that they have that wall and that you have to work together to, to kind of that tentative cooperation to help stop the invaders. That is in both games, but other than that, there's not a ton that is similar in these 2 games. I actually really enjoy both games as well, but this one I would say it's so tight. And Great Wall's tight too. I'll stop even comparing them because they are quite different. But this game is so tight that you don't really want to give up that turn to defend the walls, and you don't really want to give up those resources to defend the walls, but you also really need to, because that is such a source of points, and you really do want to protect your governors.
Yeah, so you want to keep those governors in place because you probably have built your strategy a little bit around those governors. But I think, pleasantly surprised, because when this was first described to me as these attackers coming in and destroying things, I thought it would have an even bigger impact. And I think really what it is, it's another scoring method, because you are so motivated to defend because of all of those points. So it's not just defending to make sure stuff doesn't get destroyed, but it is another avenue to be able to do well, is the defender points. And if you really don't want them to be as aggressive, there is the easy mode of cards. So it comes with 2 decks, the normal deck and the easy deck, and that will change like how many times, and I think the strength of attack for those invaders.
Also, things you have to think about is the interaction in this game, because often when people think of a Euro game like this, they think, oh, it's going to be, multiplayer solitaire, which honestly I do not have a problem with. I like a lot of that sort of game, but this is definitely not that. This has a ton of interaction in a ton of different ways, because you've got that wall where you are the competitive cooperation, but you've also got the governors where you're racing to. You've also got every time you put something on a space, anyone else who puts something on that same space has to pay an extra coin for everyone else who's already there. And coins are really hard to come by. And the shipping as well is also super competitive.
Yeah, because anytime you ship, you block out the reward that you've taken. And you can even ship like multiple times. So you could go to ship and cover 2 spaces. So that means if you did that, then on my turn, if I was planning to do that, I may not have any rewards available. So it's no longer worth doing. And the other key part of interaction are the barges, because you're adding a person to the barge, but there's other people on the barge. And anytime you're adding a 4th person, the person who was there first comes off, and then they get given to their owner, and that goes on the player board bonuses. And so it's interesting because you'll often need resources. So you will need to add people to those barges. But then you'll realize that that might, like if I add one, Sean gets a person back. And those player board bonuses are really strong.
Yeah, those are maybe the strongest bonuses in the game. And you're not going to get to do them that many times in a game. So you really want to take advantage of those, and you want to set those up as much as you want. So you do want to put people on barges early, because also they get income. So they get immediate stuff. And at the beginning of every round, they're still on barges. They're going to get you more stuff, and you got to get as much stuff as you can. And then the other part of interaction is just racing up those tracks, because at the end of the game, you're going to score more points, obviously. You're going to score based on how high you are up on each one of those different tracks. And that is, it's worth being up on those tracks, both for those points and because you get those bonus tiles, and you get the bonuses specific to each track as well, which are very strong.
Yeah, and those bonus tiles are whoever gets there first gets first choice. So you get more options if you're there earlier. And one of the things that you can try and do is collect the amulets, I think they're called, or statues.
Statue idols, maybe?
Idols. So one of the things you're trying to do is collect these idols, because then at the end of the round, you can pay to go up even more tracks. And so there is often a race for those, particularly if there is one that you're both gunning for.
One important thing with this game, and speaking of the tracks and the interaction and everything else, is that at 2 players, you are using kind of a bot player. Well, really a bot player. So you've got an extra board that is out, and that has got a deck of cards, and you're putting 3 cards on top of the board. Each time it's their turn, they'll always go third in a round. You're going to flip that top card, and then they're going to do a whole bunch of different stuff. It's not that hard to run if you have played a lot of solo games, if you're fairly similar with this kind of system where you've got a card and you're going to run a bot based on that card. But it is enough that it does kind of take you out of it a little bit when you're playing with that bot.
Yeah, and it's because it is such a thinky game that you're usually spending all of the time when it's not your turn thinking about your turn. So then if you have to stop that and do the bot actions, and then that again, that resets the board. So then you have to reevaluate what you want to do. But it does work pretty well, because you absolutely do need that like third fake player, because they contribute for lots of reasons. Firstly, they contribute to the defense of the wall, and that is huge, because without them, we would get attacked. Like,
we would get
all
destroyed.
The time.
Yeah, they contribute a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not like that hard, but you're doing kind of 4 things on a card. So a card will generally have, you're going to put one of their people out into this region, then you're going to move up that track, then you're going to add a governor to whatever, then you're going to add military to these things, then you're going to move up another second track. And so they're kind of doing double what you do, but they only do 3 turns. So often with players, you're doing, your 3 action disc turns, but then you're also doing those barge turns, which stretches out your turns a little bit further than theirs. So they're kind of cramming them into those 3 rounds. So it does a really good job. I don't know how else they would do it. So it does all of that well, but just it is worth giving the heads up that if this is the sort of system that you're not that comfortable with, it will feel like, you're doing quite a bit, and you kind of have to reset your brain again to, okay, what was I up to? Right, this is the stuff that I was doing.
If you're playing with 4 players, then you use the other side of the board, which is 4-player specific. And so that will just have like more bonus options along the temples. It will just play better for 4 players by having more spaces available, like for walls and people to put out. And so it is nice that it is double-sided.
And there's also a solo mode, and that works a lot like the 2-player mode. It has very similar cards to the 2-player mode, except that now the bot is also scoring things, and it has a really, you can really change up the difficulty level because it's got a whole bunch of cards, and you can add in more or fewer of the especially difficult, powerful cards to that deck.
So the number of players you're playing with can make things feel a little bit different, but there are lots of other differences that change game to game. And I think for me, the biggest one are your player boards. And so for your player boards, they're double-sided, so you pick which side you want to use, and they have specific bonuses. And those bonuses are triggered once the spaces underneath those bonuses are full from the people that came off of the barges. And so if like a space requires 2 of them and you have those 2 people, you can remove those 2 to do that bonus action. And those are very strong.
Oh, those are incredibly strong. You're not going to get to do them that many times in a game, but usually you've got 2 that are 2 people and 1 that is 1 person. So you can focus on the slightly less strong 1-person bonus if you want. But you can also really build your strategy around that.
And I like that you get the choice because it is 2-sided. So you do have an opportunity to choose. There are a few other things that will make it feel a bit different. The objective cards certainly will, because they come with a whole bunch of different goods and resources that you can get, but also different scoring conditions. And because those can score you a lot of points, you probably will be working towards fulfilling those.
And you do get those objective cards right at the start of the game, and so that really does help to focus you. And I think I've generally gotten fairly lucky with that, where I end up with 1 has to do with the wall, 1 has to do with the governors where you put the different regions, maybe 1 has to do with the shipping. And I usually think pretty early on, I'm going to do these 2. I'm probably not going to do that one, but I'll hold on to it to see, and then when I most need it, I'll get rid of that for stuff. And I do generally try and go up that red track because I think that other objective card, it's just so worth it because you're getting 3 or 4 goods. But then that does mean that I'm doing actions in the red zones, so everything that you do kind of focuses you in a certain way, because if you want to move up a track, you're only going to go to those 2 places. The wall always lets you go to any of the places. So every bit of kind of your plan is going to link to other parts of your plan.
Also, those bonus tiles that are going on the temple tracks are going out randomly, so those might influence which temple tracks you want to go up. There are also quite a few differences too, because you're not using the same buildings every game. So you're always using, I think, like 4 income buildings, and then the rest are your like ongoing bonuses. But those are like selected from a bigger stack. So you're going to have different buildings in different sections. The ships as well are subdivided, where the sail, which is like the main thing you're delivering for your main reward, then gets attached to the extra reward as well. So those are all going to be quite a bit different too. So every time you play, everything is just going to be set up in a different way that will drive you down different routes.
So the main group that this game is for really is folks who like a really thinky game, because boy, do you have to think out. So you're gonna have to be comfortable with thinking kind of 3-4 turns ahead. I generally am always thinking about these next 3 turns because it just melts my brain to think about next round. Then when we come to next round, I think, okay, it's like a whole new start almost, which maybe isn't the best way to play. But you're definitely gonna have to think out a chunk ahead. You cannot play this game turn by turn. And you are also going to have a plan B, because often it ends up where I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to ship this, and then I'm going to go to the wall and I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to put this governor here with the resources I get from those first two things. And then Jess goes and ships exactly where I wanted to go. Now I can't get that wood. So now I've got to change that whole thing. Or she goes to the space I wanted to go to and I don't have a coin to pay in order to take that space. So now I got to think about that. So you're going to need a plan A, B, and C. And you're going to have some patience to wait for everyone around the table, because every single turn is going to take some time. There just aren't quick turns in this game.
No, there aren't, because exactly that. You have to be planning ahead, but you're going to have to be reactive to what's happened between your turns. And that can take a lot of thinking. And you're really trying to squeeze out every single resource, every single coin. And you'll often feel like it's doable, but you just have to figure out how. So you spend a lot of time really trying to figure out how to be able to do that. And so often, like, what you'll end up doing is like, okay, I just need that one wood. So you put a person on the barge. You're like, phew. But then you're like, okay, now my big turn is going to be my next turn. And if you're playing at 2 players, it is worth noting that you do have to use a bot. It is a pretty straightforward bot, and it does work well as a 3rd player. But if it isn't something you're used to playing, I think it is worth being mindful about.
Yeah, and it's a straightforward bot if you're the sort of person who has used bots in the past. If you're pretty new to that, then you're going to feel like this is quite a complex bot. But if you have played other games that have this kind of system, then you're going to be fairly comfortable with this sort of bot. But yeah, just to get back to the how much you are thinking about. And I think you made a really good point that you have so many turns where you think, I know that there's a way to do this because I'm just 1 wood away and I'm 1 coin away. And just that often you're not going to be able to do all that stuff. So often on a turn, you think about it for a while and you're like, you know what, screw it. That I'm just going to do the most I can do right now. So you're also going to have to be the sort of person who's fine with that.
But the flip side of that is it feels really rewarding when you can pull it off. Because when you can go to a space and you can trade in, a few resources for a good, you can go up a temple track and get a bonus tile, you can install a governor, and that governor is going to give you like ongoing income. That can feel incredibly rewarding. And that is like the essence of like what brings you to playing these games, is that challenge, and how tight everything is means that like when you are successful at it, then it's just rewarding.
And I would say that for the T series of games as well, this probably goes kind of in my top half of the T series. I don't think it reaches like Tzolk'in, or I actually really like Tillatum of kind of the slightly more recent ones. But I do think it's certainly not in the bottom chunk. Not that there are terrible games in the T series, there really aren't. But I do think it's probably in that top half. And I like that competitive cooperation of building the wall. I think that makes this one maybe stand out from some of the others. There are some that I haven't played. So if you're at home screaming that, no, they do that in this one, then please let me know, because I'd love to play those other ones too. But as someone who generally enjoys the T series, I would put this kind of in the higher part of that middle third.
Yeah, I'd agree. For me, I think Tillatum is my favorite of the series, and I quite like Teotihuacan, but this probably falls within the top third for me. So I think for folks who really like the T series, I think this is one definitely worth checking out.
And that is it. Have you played Tianxia? Are we pronouncing it wildly incorrectly? Please do let us know both of those things, and let us know where this fits in the T series for you. What are your favorites in the T series?
Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.